Welcome back to Here's the Common Game. Today in deck number 600, or whoa, 712, we're going to talk about Fain the Broker that actually resembles remarkably a lot like Loki. I mean, is there. For 3 mana, we have a 3/3 human warlock. It's got a host of abilities. I love these. So you all of these, well, not all of them. You tap, sack a creature, put 2/1/1 counters on a creature. Okay. Or tap, remove a counter from a creature you control to create a treasure. Tap, sack an artifact to get an inkling. And then 4 mana untaps. I like the way you actually can net positive here. So you sack the creature to get 2 counters. You remove one of those counters, so you're still left with one to get a treasure, which is an artifact that you sack to get the inkling that you can turn around and sack to get 2 counters. So it's whatever you're needing to do. Now the 4 mana untapping, that's a bit, but there are other ways around that. So sacking creatures, removing counters, sacrificing artifacts, these are all things that I'm looking to do. But my number one card that I thought of was Thornbite Staff, because this way, if you sack a creature, it has whenever a creature is put into a graveyard from play, untap it, so you can continually do that. Now, there are 2 options there, or the 3 options, but one you can sacrifice a creature, one you can sacrifice an artifact. So I have a host of artifact creatures because that way you can use it for either one. The multiplier artifact creatures is what came to mind first. Thopter Assembly. You cast it for 6, and then during your upkeep, you're going to bring it back because you're not going to have any of the Thopters, and you get 5 artifact creatures. And you've still got the Thopter Assembly in your hand. So the same is true for Precursor Golem. It makes 2 Mere Battlesphere. And then we have things like Cathodion. I've never known how to pronounce this thing since Ursus. But when it dies, you get triple colorless. So not only do you get to sack it and do the Fein's ability, but you get mana for your trouble. Now, Arcbound Crusher, this is beautiful on all fronts because another artifact comes into play, it gets a counter. So your Thopters, your Golems, whatever, and then it has modular, so when you sack it, you can put those counters on something else. It's beautiful. Clockwork Condor, it comes into play with 1/1 counters on it, and the beautiful part about these +1 counters is they're counters you can remove for Fein's ability, so it works. Mere Retriever, when it goes to the graveyard, you get another artifact back. Meteor Golem's just a good card in general, but normally we spend our 7 mana, we pop the permanent, and that's the end of the value for Meteor Golem. But no, it's an artifact creature so that we can sack to our commander. Sandstone Oracle, similar with card draw. Pentavus. Pentavus is, I love this because it gets 5/1/1 counters. You can remove those counters to make more artifact creatures. And then it seems like there's something here that I may be missing a piece. Maybe it's Ashnod's Altar, maybe it's Crackling Ironworks. I'm not entirely sure. It's within reach though. You see what I'm saying? It's and then of course there's the Scrap Heap Scrounger that just pops back up out of the graveyard. Personal favorite of mine is Hell's Caretaker and the ability to swap one of your tokens for a creature that you actually sacrificed back and forth, is just outstanding. Now, because Feign requires you sacrificing things, we have a few death triggers here. Grim Haruspex. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, draw a card. That's going to happen. Falcon Wrath Noble. Target player loses 1, you gain 1. Blood Artist, lose 1, gain 1. Zulaport Cutthroat, same thing. Butcher of Malakir is a creature version of the Grave Pact. It's beautiful. Disciple of the Vault, because we do have so many artifacts and artifact creatures that will be looping. Target opponent's losing a life. And Jar of Eyeballs. I know, but whenever a creature you control dies, you get 2 eyeball counters on it. Those are counters that Fain can remove. Yeah, you know, the whole paragraph about removing the counters, but um, it's an artifact to sack, and it has counters on it that you can remove for that ability. And, you know, I did put the Witch's Oven with the Cauldron Familiar. Let's see here. What else we got? Stuff that has counters. Yeah. Um, Maze Mind Tome. What sucks about the Maze Mind Tome is that once you get 4 page counters on it, it's gone. But with Fain, you can remove those counters and keep drawing the cards on the cheap, because 2 to cast and 2 to use is not bad for drawing a card. The rest of these are token makers. You know, Breeding Pit's going to spit that thrall out every turn. You can sack it. Trading Post is just a monster of a card here. Um, you know, you can get your creatures. Yeah, sack artifacts, sack creatures. It's everything we need. Nuisance Engines, of course, going to make those pests. Dreadhorde Invasion. This is an awful lot like what is it? A significantly worse Bitter Blossom in this deck, because you know, ideally you're going to just slaughter that amass token every turn. Open the Graves. Whenever non-token creature you control dies, you get a zombie. So, yeah, you're sacking a creature and you're getting a zombie, which, you know. And then we have Revel in Riches, you know, for the treasure. Because why not, you know? So let's look at our ramp, shall we? Before I get further off kilter here, we have Dark Ritual, Cabal Ritual, and a host of rocks. Now, of course, Lead Mirror late in the game. If you don't need your mana ramp, it's an artifact creature you can sack. But any of these you can sack because they're, you know, artifacts. Everflowing Chalice. It's wonderful because you can put the counters on it, and if you don't need the mana, you can remove those counters. Or, since we do have a lot of +1s going in the deck, our Throne of Geth to proliferate those counters. Either way, it works. Then we have Star Compass, Charcoal Diamond, Guardian Idol, Mind Stone, Pristine Talisman, and Commander Sphere. I know it's monocolor, but the Commander Sphere's in there for that sack draw card. And then Priest of Yawgmoth. Now, it sacrifices an artifact to get mana. So you can essentially, by casting an artifact, put it on layaway. You know, Ashnod's Transmograte to turn something into an artifact. Vampire Hexmage, just because it's a good card, it sacks itself. We may need to fight off a whole bunch of planeswalkers or whatever, you know. And then got to have that cranial plating, because this many artifacts in a black deck. Obviously, we care about making something big with Fain, mounting up those counters. Got Sun and Blood and Painful Lesson. Now let's look at our creatures proper. The creatures that we're going to be, you know, looping or sacrificing or whatever. Archfiend's Vessel. If it enters the battlefield, if it enters from your graveyard, like off of your Hell's Caretaker, you get a 5/5 demon. Okay. Doom Dissenter. When it dies, you get a zombie token, which is really good. It kind of replaces itself when you sack it. Piper of the Swarm. You can make rats, and then if something, you know, it has its own plan of sacking rats to steal a creature. Weaponcraft Enthusiast. Fabricate 2? No. We're not putting the 1/1 counters. We're getting the servos every single time. because this is 3 mana for 3 bodies, 2 of which are artifact creatures, which we're, you know, prizing better than. Now, Endling, there's only 2 persist creatures, or 1 persist, 1 undying. Endling's in there because of undying, and we can give it undying. It before we sack it, it'll die. It'll come back with a 1/1 counter. Then we can use Feign to remove that counter. So when it dies again, it just keeps coming back. Kind of the same thing with Lingering Tormentor and Persist in its Pringle version here. The Sling Gang Lieutenant, man, that's hard to say. You know, it's 4 mana, 3 bodies. Gravedigger, because Gravedigger is exactly what you want to be bringing back with, like, your Hell's Caretaker. You know, you sack your Gravedigger for whatever you want back, and then you do it again, and then the Gravedigger brings back the other thing, and it's beautiful. Shriekmaw. It's a great card. We might actually want to think about paying full price here for Shriekmaw. That way we can loop it back and forth. Or, you know, if the Caretaker's already online. Yeah, the Hell's Caretaker's a huge piece of this deck. But Grey Merchant of Asphodel, I mean, we're in mono black. It's just a heck of a card. And since we're on the mono black topic, that's why we've got Ascendant Evencar and Nightmare. But our last creature is, of course, that Dark Hatchling. You know, it's 1/8/7's a creature. Removal wise, now there was a ton of removal in there in creatures, you know, and looping back and forth. But we have Ashes to Ashes, because there's sometimes exiling creatures. You know, doesn't matter if they're indestructible or not; they're gone. Feed the Swarm, got to have that one in mono black, and then a Plague Crafter. And that takes us to our non-basic lands. You know, of course, I have to have that Karn's Bastion for the Proliferate. Rogue's Passage, something's getting through. Cycle lands, Barren Moor, Polluted Mire, and Desert of the Glorified. Everglades, it's a bounce land, but, you know, it does give you 2. And then Eben Stronghold, because a lot of times, if you don't have a first turn play, this is the perfect first turn land, right? So that is Feign. I don't know. Kind of looking forward to playing it. It's not. It has a very toolboxy feel, you know. I didn't put my tokens in there, so that is Feign. So we're gonna go put 7/12 on the wall. Done with that one, and that is what we have got for today. I do appreciate everybody watching, and right now we're gonna go ahead and shuffle and cut.